Welcome back to the channel. I am your host, Claire Headley, and this is my next episode of Scientology Stories, in which I interview people about their experiences in Scientology. And as always, just a reminder, Scientology does not want you to hear these stories. So thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here. And with that, I would like to introduce my guest for today. Miss Katherine Spallino is the author of The Bad Cadet. I will link to that book, and let me add in Katherine here. Welcome,
Hey, hi.
Katherine. I so appreciate you being here.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to chat with you again. It was so fun talking with you and Amy a few weeks ago. So I don't know
Yes.
why I say fun. I mean, it is. It's just good to talk to good people, I guess.
Yes,
Yeah.
it is. And I just think personally from, I've gone through phases. I'd love to hear your perspective on this too. There's times when there's nothing I want more than to never talk about Scientology ever again. And in fact, that was my vision when I first left, is I kind of had this mental imagery of I'm locking the door, throwing away the key, and moving on and starting a new life. But I think there's definite therapeutic value in talking to people who understand, who can relate, who know what you've been through. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I think for a while coming out of Scientology, which is a different story called The Bad Scientologist, because leaving the Sea Org is one thing and then leaving Scientology is a whole nother ballgame. So at first I was all up in the internet and learning and wanting to know everything. And it was a lot. And then I was like putting all my journal entries down. So I think I processed everything really well. And then I kind of, threw it away. I was like, okay, I'm not doing anything with this now. I'm out of it. My parents are still in it, and I'm going to not say anything negative publicly to keep them in my life because they're in the Sea Org. Still currently to this day, they're in the Sea Org. And then, of course, the Sea Org being the Sea Org, they take my family anyway. And that made me be like, okay, I'm going to write this book that I had basically had written drafts of, but was like, I wouldn't do anything with it. And then I was like, I guess I'm going to be one of those people out there. So yeah, kind of like you, like I wasn't planning on it necessarily, but then it was meant to happen, I'd say, I guess.
Yes, Scientology makes the hard choices for you when they leverage
Yeah.
and inflict disconnection on and destroy your family as a result. It's
Mm-hmm.
sad, and you'd think that they would have learned by now from their mistakes, but obviously, given that they only ever operate on L. Ron Hubbard's words, they cannot change their ways.
Yeah, it's ridiculous how much they will not change.
Yeah,
It's wild. There's so
yeah,
much they can learn and do. I mean,
yeah.
it's limitless
I
what
know,
they can
right? And
change.
I'm sorry to hear that about your parents. I will hope and
Mm-hmm.
pray that someday you'll be reunited. Never say never is my view, because
Mm-hmm.
there's many examples of people that in the last 18 years that I've reconnected with that I never imagined would happen. So don't ever give
Yeah.
up hope, but I'm sorry that you've had to live through that. On the other hand, I'm very grateful you're here, and I'm incredibly grateful that you shared your story, because your book is at least from my perspective very important, and a perspective of having grown up in the cadet organization, which
Mm-hmm.
for people listening that don't know what that is, from at least my definition of that is where children of Sea members of the Sea organization, in other words, the parents have signed a billion-year contract, and the children are all sent to the cadet organization, where they're then trained for the same billion-year commitment their parents are carrying out. That's my what's your do
Mm-hmm.
you have any revisions or modifications to
No,
that?
it's like really, really spot on. You're from the time I was a child, like first memories. I know I'm going to join the Sea Org, that's my purpose. That's the only thing I can believe is that I'm going
Yes.
to join the Sea Org. I can't have any other dreams. Like I want to be a doctor. I want to be an astronaut, whatever. That's not in my future. It's like, that's what I have to do. And we're raised in a mini Sea Org and without our parents, which is mind boggling to this day that I'm like, wow, that happened.
Yes, completely. I
Yeah.
know. I was in the cadet org from age 4 to 10 in England. So it will
Yeah.
be interesting to see how our experiences compare, but your book is just really outlines the day to day and the trials and tribulations and
Mhm.
the simple fact of indoctrination of very young children into a cult mindset it is insane.
Yeah. I was hoping when I wrote it, and I'm so glad that you appreciated it, like that part of it. I was trying to just to show really what it's like to be a little girl growing up in the Church of Scientology under cult, under indoctrination, and that includes what a little girl finds important and what they don't. And some people, especially in those first few chapters, are just flabbergasted. They're like, "How does she not care that she's not with her parents?" And it's because I don't know any better. And that's what I'm trying to like show in this book is how much I'm indoctrinated to believe that it's more important for my parents to be working for the Sea Org than to be with me, and
Mhm.
how I wanted people to be on that journey as I go, as I get older. I get sent to the cadet org, and you get to see what it's like to be an actual cadet org, how we function, how the kids are. And I thought I was hoping that I was writing a book that was very universal for any young person who grew up in a cult to see what the signs are and like how I got out of it. And yeah, I hope that's what I
Definitely.
managed to do. Yeah.
That came through to me loud and clear, let me tell
That's
you.
awesome.
And let me ask you too, so it's interesting you comment on that about like, the mindset, like why weren't you wanting to be with your parents? I would have two comments on that from my
Mhm.
experiences, and I'm
Yeah.
interested to hear your thoughts. For me, because I absolutely threw fits several times, but then I was punished for that and told that I was
Mhm.
dramatizing and being out ethics and,
Yeah, knock
you
off
know,
the DNR. Don't have any
yes,
emotions.
yes, like I was a
Yeah.
bad kid for being upset that I wasn't getting to spend time with my mother, who was, on the path, clearing the planet, doing things for the greatest good. Was that also true
Mhm.
in the cadet org where you grew up in LA?
You
That kind
know,
of tone?
yeah, for sure. It was like, don't
Okay.
disturb your parents. They're on post. I was number 4 of 4 kids, so I don't know if I already was gonna have a little bit more neglect in that way. So my parents were less involved than other parents. There were parents who would come up every weekend to the ranch, and they had their own car. My parents didn't have a car, and then they stopped sending the bus up from Pack, but they didn't try. And I think like part of it of me not always I didn't see them as much, so I don't think I had as much of like a upset when I didn't see them because
Yeah.
I had already never really made that effort when I was little that made me like have to see them. Whereas I did know cadets who like if they didn't see their parents every other weekend, they would get upset. And I don't know what their consequences are, but I think that their parents would also fight for them or like there is some level of care that parents can choose to have. And obviously it's still not enough to just see them every other weekend. And it was
Right.
rare, but it was like the ones that were only child, which when I
Yes,
noticed.
which is what I
Yes.
was. So it
Okay.
totally makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, my mom was a single mom. So yeah,
Okay.
very
And so it's just
definitely.
very a close relationship. Yeah.
Yeah.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, because
It's
I felt like
just,
I didn't know my dad growing up. Even to this day, when he would visit me as an adult, when before he disconnected, he's just like a person that I was like, "Oh, you're my dad." That's the title. But like, I don't like have that dad feeling. Whereas I do have that with my mom, but she was a teacher at the school, so I got to see her a bit growing up. Um,
wow.
and she said she nursed me till I was like 12 weeks old at least. So I'm sure there was some of that skin on skin, the kangaroo care or whatever. So I'm
Yeah.
like, maybe that like created this deep bond because to this day, even though my mom is disconnected, like I have such deep love for her.
Yeah.
And hopefully I will get to talk to her. Yeah, I'm not going to give up on that.
Yeah.
So
Love will always survive. So
yeah.
it will happen, and the bottom line is you're in her heart just as she's in yours. So that's a beautiful
Yeah,
thing.
and I would
And
love to get to know my dad more if he came out with my mom too. Like, I wish him the best as well, and I love him too, and to build that relationship.
yeah, it's never too late to recover
Mhm,
those family bonds. I know, and that's a beautiful thing. But
mhm,
wow. Yeah, and the other part of the my comment on this was going to be on my personal view is it's mind-blowing the tenacity of children, but
mhm,
also I think that education then kind of helps a child to reconcile as they grow into adulthood, right from
Mm-hmm.
wrong. And it's just
Yeah.
fascinating how much Scientology denigrates and discourages formal education, especially now
Mm-hmm.
being a mom. I'm sure you've had the same experience. Like, my
Yeah.
kids are absolutely going to high school. I would love for them to go to college if
Mm-hmm.
they have a goal. We're going to support that. We've already told them that we want them to be successful, and a good education is it's a
Mm-hmm.
fundamental responsibility as a parent to ensure your child gets that.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's like, and not only that, like making sure they're learning, and then also like, what do they love? How can we nurture their spirit? What can we do for them? All of us cadets were just little robots. All of you are doing the same thing. This is what you're doing. None of us could have any dreams or possibilities of anything. Whereas my children, I'm like, oh my gosh, you love your soccer. Like, I'm going to get you in all the camps. We're going to have you in your soccer leagues. And met another kid, he loves theater, and it's like he just was in a 5-week theater camp and he loved it, and just day camp, 8 to 3, and
Yes.
got to put on a performance, and it's like the joy he gets from that gives me joy. And it's just so sad that it was that in the Sea Org, everybody loses their individuality, and to do it to children is even worse, because that's when they're supposed to be dreaming and wanting to learn what they want and getting to explore, and to not even have those opportunities when I was little is very sad. I'm glad that
Completely.
I came out of it and I'm okay. And like, but I could definitely recognize, I'm like, oh, I missed a huge chunk of something really important.
For sure. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. Um, what was the most helpful thing for you in kind of getting out of that mindset?
Of the mindset of
The
like
Scientology
being,
mindset,
yeah.
the years of indoctrination as a child. I'm just curious to hear your thoughts
Yeah.
on that. Like, what helped you the
Yeah.
most in terms of gaining perspective and pulling
Like
away
as a
from that?
cadet or when I left Scientology?
Um,
Both.
both, yes.
Yeah, I think that I'm luckily, my spirit is very strong-willed, and I couldn't take the boredom and like the very menial tasks they would give me, and I couldn't help but rebel against it, and I would just do it over and over. And when I leave the SEERG, it's like, there's something wrong with me. Let me help you guys out. I'm gonna leave, but I also want to have fun and like have a life. But I'll be a really good Scientologist, I promise. And it was like, I think for me, I just put myself first. And that's what any person should do, along, not to like put anybody down around them, of course, but you need to take care of yourself in order to be good with others and to have a good life. And I
Yeah.
think eventually, as I get older, you could see it in the book, as like I have all these, times when I do want to leave, and I talk myself back into it because of the indoctrination of the Sea Org. And
Yes.
you could follow that path of like, me trying to be independent, and then I squish it back down, and eventually how do I overcome it and leave the Sea Org is like this journey of a young girl and how she managed to get there, she being me, but
Yes, of
yeah.
course. No, no, totally. And
Yeah.
it's fascinating that you say that because, of course, in Scientology, it's so heavily indoctrinated that putting yourself first is
Hmm.
a bad thing to do, and you're not supposed to do that, and you're out ethics and off purpose if you do that. And yet you stated it perfectly. Have
Hmm.
yourself in order first, and you will give your best contributions and live your best life by doing that.
Yeah, exactly. And I was only literally trying to do the best for the Sea Org when I was leaving, because I knew I couldn't be that person they wanted. I couldn't
Yeah.
be a good Sea Org member. And so when I left, I was like excited because I get to have a life, but I'm like, I'll just be a good Scientologist. And that's another journey of being when I'm out in the real world and I get to encounter people who are like so kind and so
Yes.
empathetic, and I begin to start to see the juxtaposition and then some horrible things that the church does towards me, saying I'm causing one of my older brothers was getting sick, and I was I was the reason. It was so horrible. So all of these things lining up, and then I had a boyfriend who was not in the Scientology at all. So to have a comparison of the good and others and just going through all of that was so helpful for me. So I think anybody who's like leaving a cult or like curious and then maybe they're starting to watch videos about it, it's like maybe just go travel, go meet other people, and just start to observe and see things for yourself. instead of
Yes.
just believing everything that somebody or some organization is telling you.
Yes, totally. I've been thinking about that recently,
Mhm.
starting to work on putting together resources for people. Like, in other words, and again, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Like, as somebody,
Yeah.
when I escaped and was chased and all of that drama and was able to
Yeah.
reunite with Mark,
Yeah. That
I
story is
was,
wild. Yeah.
yes, totally. I was terrified, though, to hear anything bad
Mhm.
about Scientology. I
Yeah.
never Googled it. I was of this, like you, I was like, I'm just going to get on with my life. I don't know. I never had a plan to be a good Scientologist simply because I was declared a suppressive person so
Mhm.
quickly. Um,
Yeah.
but, but I didn't want, I couldn't like hear any evil about Scientology for a while.
Mhm.
So I was trying to think of resources like what books could you read that's not necessarily like My Terrible Life in Scientology, or, like in other words, just kind of softer, like Viktor Frankl's Man's Search for Meaning, I think the title is a great book
Yeah.
that anybody could read and gain a different perspective, like books like that. Or
Mhm.
then the less subtle 1984 by George Orwell,
Yes.
where
Oh
you're like, "Oh my gosh, this is
gosh.
like a mirror image of my
Oh,
life
to
in
see thank
Scientology."
you. Oh my gosh. I tell that to people all the time, and I was saying that back in my early 20s. I said it to my sister who's in the Sea Org, who was also disconnected. I hope to reconnect with her one day, but she's like, "I'm reading 1984," and I was like, "You are?" I'm like, "Don't you find some comparisons there?" And she was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "Well, in like Big Brother, they're always watching, there's cameras, you self-regulate your thoughts, you write each other up, like people report on you." And she was like, "I can't believe you're comparing the Sea Org to 1984." And I was like, "I'm sorry, but," and then I was like, "Okay, I'm sorry, I'm sorry." And then later on, when she disconnected me from me, when she was the one who made the call, she's like, "And you said that hurtful thing about the Sea Org." It was like years later, and she brought that up. I was like, "Oh, that one stuck." But that's a good novel for sure. And even like maybe like Education by Tara Westover. That
Oh, that's a
one.
great book. Yeah,
Yeah, because
you mean,
that's more
isn't it called,
educated.
Uneducated?
Uneducated, yeah.
Yes,
Or
yes.
yes, yes.
Yeah,
That
either way,
one,
I know the book you're talking about. It's brilliant. You're
yeah.
absolutely right. And what a great story too about starting over. Just like you
Mhm.
have your story of starting over, I have my story of starting over from a high control group. It's
Yeah.
incredible. But to finish up on 1984, I can relate to the cognitive dissonance aspect there of your sister
Mhm.
because I read it
Yeah.
before I joined this organization,
Oh,
and all
okay.
the thoughts were there. I just never admitted to myself. I couldn't um, actively draw those parallels.
Yeah.
Um, I was thinking recently I should reread it because I know they're deeply there.
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
it's so interesting. That book, when I read it, I was just like, wow, this is crazy. And I think that they used to be buddies, L. Ron Hubbard and George Orwell, or something along those lines. So
Yeah,
I'm like, did he
definitely.
copy it? Like, it's
Yeah.
wild.
Oh
I want
yeah,
to
that's
know.
a
Somebody
great.
needs to investigate.
Yeah, somebody who has access to the source information retrieval system can search Orwell. I'm sure it's there. Definitely Robert Heinlein. He talks about
Hmm.
Hubbard talked about a lot. So it
Yeah.
wouldn't surprise me one bit. And in fact, I definitely know that he talked. Made references to George Orwell and Big Brother in 1984. So wouldn't he
Yeah.
absolutely talked about it in lectures and so on and so forth. So
Wow. Yeah.
whether he saw the parallels, copied the parallels, or ignored
Well,
them
he's a big
completely.
theorist. We all know that. He takes everything from everything. So I would not be surprised if it inspired him and then he just claims it as his own,
Yeah,
you know.
completely.
Yeah. And I mean, the military, he based the Sea Org off the military.
Yes.
So
And then Navy and all that. Yeah.
yeah.
Plagiarist to the T. Even two-way communication. I'm sure you remember that as
Yeah.
Hubbard's breakthrough communication technology. I found out that was from a book that was written in like 1910.
Oh wow, that's where he got that. See,
Yeah.
like, and all the stuff that's what people need to understand too is when you first come into Scientology, all of the self-help books that you start with are actually helpful because he stole it from things that were like he just took it and he wrote it all out. And then
Yep.
as you get more into Scientology, and suddenly things begin to change, and there's a lot of indoctrination and like the TRs. It's like where you're hypnotizing yourself and you don't mean to be, and all of that. But that beginning level is self-help books, which people don't realize, like, oh, they're like, oh, I'm having a win. And you're meeting people who can only be happy. So you're like,
Right.
these people are so nice. Wow. They're so like
Yes.
240. And then you get sucked in.
Yeah, no, totally. And the layer of lies, even at the outset, like,
Mhm.
think back on Scientology says, oh, or Hubbard says, what's true for you is what's true.
Yeah,
Really?
but that's
Was
not
that was
really.
that your experience?
Yeah. And you're not allowed to question anything though. So,
Yeah,
huh?
no.
What?
It can be true for you just so long as what's true for you is what's true for us.
Yeah.
And
And it
if
follows
there's
what L. Ron Hubbard says only.
exactly, if there's any discrepancy, you've got a big
You got
problem.
a misunderstood word. Yes. Something wrong with you, not with the
Yeah.
text.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So walk me through what this process was like of writing this book for you. Like, how did it all start? How did it come together? What did you go through? I'm very interested to hear your journey on this.
Yeah, because you're doing the same, right? You're going through
Yes.
yours. It's so cool. Yeah, it's been so the nice thing was I had no pressure on myself. So I was just like, I had kept journals when I was growing up, and I was also aware because I would read all the time that this world was different. So I kind of clocked everything in my mind, like, oh, this would be an interesting story one day. And then I decided to start writing it down, and I put it all down, just really blurted it all out. And that was actually nice, but it also gave me nightmares.
Oh,
So like I would go to sleep and like dream about the Sea Org and like wake up like in a cold sweat. So, but after a while, those go away, and then I would put it away for a while and then come back to it. So it literally like I worked on it for a while in my early 20s, and then didn't look at it again for like 5 years, and then
wow.
came back to it, which was really nice for me because then I can relook at it with new eyes. And then I found that I wasn't as like I didn't get as triggered when I was doing it. And then I just like slowly kept at it. And Miriam, you talked with her recently. She's
Yes.
one of my really close friends. She was in my wedding. I was in her wedding.
Oh,
And she
wow. I
has
didn't know
been,
that.
yeah,
Miriam is an amazing person. She
yeah,
really
she is
is.
amazing. I grew up with her, and she's in my book too. She's the only
I
one who doesn't
remember
have a
that part.
pseudonym. Yeah.
The
So she,
LAPD
yes. Oh my
incident.
gosh.
Yes.
Yes. And that's the funny part is I thought it was like, oh, does everybody get brought back by the LAPD when you're blowing? And it's like, oh no, I guess it was just the two of us. We're really special. I don't know what that was. But she was amazing because she would read what I would send, and we would talk about facts and how it went and timeline. And she would be like, here, like what were you feeling? I feel like you could go more into the emotion in this. So I would go back and think about what was I feeling in that moment and write it a little better so it communicated. So she was so helpful in that regard. So having a great editor, like maybe Mark will be able to help you with your drafts and like give tips is so nice. And then my husband as well is a writer. So I got
Oh,
lucky.
wow. That's
Yeah.
amazing.
So he would read it and also give great constructive criticism. And then I had my friend finally when I was at the end. She's not a Scientologist at all. Met her in Minnesota. She's a good friend of mine. And I was like, would you read it and tell me what you think? And she was really great because she was like, I could picture myself as you, but in that world, except where you're like in this Scientology world. And she's like, I would find myself washing dishes and I would just start crying for you. And I'm like, but I know you. I know you're okay. So that's when I knew I was like, okay, I'm capturing like my real life. It's not just like I'm writing like dry words on a paper. Like
Yes.
people can put themselves in my shoes, and that's what I really wanted people to experience. And
Yes.
she was wonderful in that. And she also gave me great advice. She's like, there's some chapters in here that are just very teenagery, which still has a lot of that. But she was like, I feel like if it doesn't have to do with Scientology, you probably don't need it. I was like, oh, great advice. So I believe it or not, even though there's still a lot there that's like very childlike, I did streamline it. It was 150,000 words and I got it down to 90,000, and I think
Wow.
yeah. Yeah, so
Wow.
the more words the better on the way, because then you can like then really craft that story and that arc. And you could
Yes.
also feel good when you write everything down, because some memories, like I wrote these like important memories like where I like in the pool with all my friends, and like to me this was a special moment, but I'm like, I don't need to have a whole scene about it in the book.
Yes, totally. It
But I
makes
enjoyed
sense.
writing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And Mark had a similar thing when he was writing Blown for Good, Behind the
Hmm.
Iron Curtain of Scientology. Like it was the same. He had, probably double the
Yeah.
word count that he ended up with. Because at the end of the day, yes, what contributes to the story, what doesn't. And it's
Yeah.
funny how maybe your perspective changed on some of those things going through this process, it sounds like, of what was important and what could be just left out in terms of
Yeah.
forwarding the message of what you were looking for.
Yeah, it was a very cool learning experience. And I think going into writing The Bad Scientologist, which I've started,
Oh, yay.
I have more, yeah, I have more of an idea of how to do it. I'm still going to just try to get it all out there and then go back to crafting the story. But I think it will be, I'm more experienced now and I know what to expect. And yeah, I'm excited to get that coming out in a couple years. Just got to do it.
Yay. That's
Yeah.
awesome. Well,
Yeah.
you and me both. And you've
Yeah.
already you've already come out with your book, so you're well ahead of me.
Yeah, well, you'll get there. It's just the part of like sitting down and doing it and then
Yes.
and creating that time. But then it's yeah, I think you're gonna enjoy it. And when you're like done, it's so amazing. It's such a great feeling.
Yes.
Yeah. And I love Blown for Good. So you could tell Mark that. I think I already told him that too. But
You did. Thank you. I know
yeah,
it's
yeah. And like the story of you like going to the train and you sit down and when they're like trying to take you back and Mark's like freaking out, they got Claire. I was just like, oh my gosh. My heart was in my throat. That was amazing.
Yeah, even though
Yeah.
obviously that we
That
did make
everybody
it, but it
makes it
was
out.
it was crazy. I honestly had nightmares about that for a long
I
time because
know, right?
obviously it's, you know, I'm not sure if you um I don't know. The emotions of escaping and being chased were
Hmm.
really tough to move past and not to
Yes.
feel like, I don't know, it's deep.
It it really is because I also think that your story and Mark's story is so important because I had no idea being at PAC of how much work PAC is already bad, but Gold is another level where they're not letting them sleep, they're sleeping under desks, they're being physically abused by David Miscavige. Nobody knows this at PAC, like these
Right.
SEERG members walking around. They have no idea the abuse that is happening at the top. And
Yeah.
that's perfect for Amy's book, which I need to read next, Abuse at the Top. That's next on my
Yes.
list because that's just when it's so bad at the top, it all trickles down. And there's a chapter in my book. Here's the cover if anybody's curious. The Bad
Yes,
Cadet.
I love the cover. And you said your husband designed that, right?
Yes, he's
It's
so he did
awesome.
it. I'm like, I don't know, how I had a freelance designer doing one, and it was just everything she sent me was so dark. And I'm just like, I'm not a dark person in this book, even though it has a lot of dark matter in it. It's a very my voice is pretty light in it overall because it's
Yes.
just how I am. My but there's a chapter in here literally where the captain of Asha Foundation is screaming at me, and I'm only 15 years old, and spit is like coming in my face.
Ugh,
And it's just like, because what abuse is he suffering that I had no idea about, not to make it okay for him. But I'm
no.
just saying it all trickled down and it was affecting the children too. So like having your story come out and then Amy's story out there and Mark's, it's just so amazing because even for me, I'm learning more and it's makes me even more glad that I've taken this journey. I've learned a lot. And like I've been talking with, I just did a interview with Dr. Steve Hassan.
Oh,
And
yes.
yes, so that was really cool. And I read his book and I'm like, oh, now I can define what a cult is. This is amazing. So it's been a
Totally.
really cool learning experience. Yeah.
Yeah, there's so many people that have such valuable input, and it helps, at least from my perspective, from also being a child that grew up in
Hmm.
Scientology. It helps put things in context and perspective and kind of make the pieces fit together in a much more healing fashion of understanding what we've lived through.
Yeah, totally. When you talk about like that, when you're blowing, even when
Yeah.
you're just talking about that and how much you had to really process that and like it was hard to get through. Like even reading this when you're reading the chapter when I'm like walking and I could like trickle like I feel like somebody's watching me. I'm sure that probably took you back a little bit. You're like, oh God. Because it's like
Yes.
it really is scary to know people are watching you and that you
Yes.
can't leave. It's a
Yeah.
very frightening feeling.
Completely. And to me, it occurred to me recently, even just the word blow. So
Mhm.
I suppose backing up a little, I've
Yeah.
been kind of reevaluating the power of language and the impact that had on you and me growing up in Scientology and having Scientology as a first language as a child.
Yeah.
It occurred to me that even the word blow,
Mhm.
which, we've more correctly defined in real world terms as escape, because that's what it is. But the
Yeah.
word blow itself is a derogatory term. It means you've done something bad. The only reason you are doing
Mhm.
that is because you've committed crimes or done things
Yeah.
that you haven't disclosed. It's just interesting
That
that
is
you
so
go,
interesting. Yeah, wow, that's what of course it's the word that they would describe that, right? It's like
yes.
yeah. It's wild. I know oh, look, I'm wearing my SP bracelet.
Oh, yay.
Thank you.
Of course.
This is my declare since I never got one formally.
There you go.
They don't send them anymore, right? I don't
No.
think.
No, it's
Yeah.
all right. We don't we embrace that term
Yeah.
SP as special people with superpowers.
Yeah, and also and exactly. And like just taking things and changing it, making that language not so hurtful and harmful for me and like me and my friends. Like, I don't use it in my day-to-day life at all, but when me and my friends get together as a joke, we'll, like, say words just to, like, tease each other, and it's, like, all like, we're laughing and stuff, but to not have it around me, like, when I moved to Minnesota, like, when my husband got a job offer out here and he didn't wanna leave, we were just dating at the time, I was like, "Let's go." I'm like, "I want Scientology around me and these words that are so triggering and, like, how they talk and how they act, and, like, I don't have to go to events anymore," and, like, it was the perfect way to, like, get freedom is to leave that language behind is,
Yes.
like, so nice, and to not
Yes.
have that around me. Yeah.
Yes, completely, and you're right, distance is another important factor, like, when you feel that
Mhm.
you're in their backyard. I don't know, that's how we had
Yeah,
a
it really
similar thing.
does.
Yeah,
I have a
living in
friend who's
LA.
still yeah, who's in LA, and I love her, and she disconnected from me too, but sh I'm like, when she was trying to find herself in her 20s, trying to know what she wanted to do, I kept saying, like, "Go be an au pair in Europe, like, go travel," because I knew if she would travel, there was a chance that maybe she might, because she was such a diehard Scientologist, that maybe she would start to question things, and she never did, and she's still in it, and then she, blocked me and all of our friends that we grew up with. She's a cadet. And I'm just like, at first I was angry with her because she also did like websites and smear campaigns and stuff against us. But like now I'm just like sad. I pity her because she never ever like pushed herself to get out of that bubble.
Yeah.
So to yeah, travel and like
Yeah,
meet new
completely.
people. Don't only hang out with Scientologists
Right.
because that's all
Yes.
that's all they do. That's
Yeah,
the whole
I
crew.
know. Apply the multiple viewpoint system and talk to somebody else. Just do what
Yes,
Hubbard says, if nothing else. Read a book.
exactly. Oh my gosh.
It's funny how you can actually take any part of Scientology and turn it on a Scientologist, and there's not much they can say. Like
Yeah.
the last conversation I had with my stepdad, and he's another person just like your friend who's done hate videos against Mark and I.
Mhm.
The last time I saw him, I said, "Don't you believe communication is a universal solvent?" And of course, that's a
Yeah.
Hubbard quote. You and I both know that. For anyone
Yeah.
listening, if they're like, "What?" That's like
I know.
a very commonly used Scientology quote, and yet they practice disconnection. So,
Yeah.
how do you reconcile that?
I know. It's really wild that they managed to do that, and the cognitive dissonance is just it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, it really
It's like
is.
yeah. When I asked my mom, "Why did you join Scientology, like, as an adult when I was in my 20s?" I was just curious, and she said, "Because I have freedom of thought." And I was like, "Wow." And it was just like, "Okay." Like, to me, I know that's not true, but I can't make her see that. She needs to see that for herself.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
Yeah.
Completely. You have to make your own choices and you have to be able to live with them. And I doubt she's able to live with hers, but hopefully she can have the strength and courage. I don't know if you've
Mhm.
heard of the sunk cost trap.
I don't think so.
Yeah. So, obviously paraphrase. I'm not. It's a psychological phenomena generally associated with the stock market, but more broadly referenced. Um, subsequent to discussions about it, where someone's sunk costs into
Mm-hmm.
the stock market and they
Yeah.
then can't just walk away. And so
Yeah.
they keep, you know, adding and adding and adding, and they can never break the cycle as a result. To me, emotionally, that's very similar to the mindset of a Sea Org member. Like you've you know, like you've spent so many years, that many years, you've
Mm-hmm.
lost your children's childhood by your service to the Sea organization. You have memories you can't ever get back, you know, experiences you can't ever get back. I think it's very difficult to wake up and walk away from that. And yet it is definitely possible to do so.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like to have put 50, 60 years of your life and then to walk away. Of course, that's going to take so much. But yeah, I've been inspired when I hear of like Leah Remini's mom left with her, which was amazing. Right. And it's like
Yes.
those rare families where they finally said, my my family is more important than the church for once. Like for some
Yes.
to say that in the Sea Org or in Scientology is really hard for them to do. It's like, but they can do it. And it's like, please understand, like to anybody watching who's assigned to like debating about things, it's like your family should always come first. They should never be saying who you can be or who you can talk to. Even with the friends, they're like, just like block them on social media. Like it's just wild, like how they control relationships, and it's a
Yeah.
huge red flag.
Completely. The control and leverage is mind
Mhm.
blowing, as is the hate for that matter. I mean,
Yeah,
what church promotes
I
hate?
know. I know. And I'm like, don't they understand that this makes them look worse? Like it's obvious. It's even more obvious the fact that they would call people names and make these websites and call people liars or say that they're lying about sexual trauma or like abuse that they've had. Like it's just mind blowing. I'm like, they need to grow up. Really,
Yes,
like it's just wild to me.
totally.
Yeah.
It is crazy.
But they do it too to scare people because I was scared, like
Yeah.
to talk out. And but that again, it just shows you why that church is bad. Like that they're trying to threaten and bully and show like, hey, this is what we do. We'll hire PIs and follow you around or do all these things. And I was like, are they gonna do that to me? I don't want to. I have a good life. I don't want to like have that pressure and like all that. And it's but actually speaking out and talking out that relieves a lot of pressure. Actually, I feel so much better. I'm more honest and open, and like
Yes.
I'm not hiding things because like my friends I've had here for like 10 years had no idea the stuff about my childhood because I just kept it to myself. And now they're like reading my book and they're like, what? How did this happen? How are you so like well adjusted? And I'm just like, I don't know. And I'm like, I didn't really want to talk about it because it's like, it just opens up a whole story. But then I'm like, but actually, it's good to talk about it because then other people who who've had traumatic experiences or have had something happen can then feel safe enough to talk about what's happened with them and know that it's okay. And it's
Yes.
been really, really great. So,
That's amazing. And so,
yeah.
so well said, by the way, taking back your power, your
Hmm.
freedom of speech, your right to really tell people what you experienced is incredibly
Yeah.
powerful. I'm so glad to hear you say that. I felt the same way, but of course, you know,
Yeah.
I would never demand of someone to do that, but I agree with
Yeah, of
you. It can be
course. Yeah.
incredibly therapeutic. And
Hmm.
you know, to me, the only power Scientology has over me is that which I grant them. So I've chosen
Yeah.
to grant them none.
Yeah, and that's amazing. And it's like all the stuff, all the work that you guys are doing in the foundation, like the Aftermath Foundation, that I didn't even know all of this existed. So another learning experience for me has been learning about everything on SPTV and like how that there's a huge community that wants to help and like that there's people like if my parents and my sister want to come out, I know I can be like, hey guys, what are the first steps? How do I do this? To have that, and that's so amazing that you guys are doing that, and it makes me more inspired to do more too, so it's
That's
really cool.
amazing. Yes, and
Yeah.
we are the story of Surge is just one. I mean,
Yes, I
we are
watched that.
absolutely here. When
Hmm.
someone decides to leave Scientology, we are here to help. There's somebody we're helping right this moment. So
Yeah, that's awesome. It's really amazing because you really it's so scary to leave the Sea Org and have nothing, and especially if you've had trauma or other things that have happened, to have yeah, resources and people who genuinely care because that's the thing that this whole community and everybody, even the viewers, like everybody, like I'll read comments and they're so supportive and it's so kind and it makes me feel more affirmed to be doing this, and like just amazed.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. So speaking of which, do you have any plans to start a YouTube channel?
I don't know. Everybody was like saying that. I'm like, I don't know what that means. You know what I mean? Like, it's like I'm just coming back into this whole world, because we were even talking about how I put everything aside and I was just writing the book. So I had my head down and had no idea that this was all happening SPTV. So it's been really cool to learn about.
Yes.
But Liz and I have been talking, Liz Gale and I, and we're talking about doing some videos together. So I'm like, well, I guess I could put it on my channel. So if people want to start subscribing, they can.
Oh,
I
awesome.
don't know. Yeah,
What's your channel name?
the Bad Cadet.
Okay,
So easy
perfect.
enough. Yeah.
I will link to that as well. I
Yeah.
didn't realize you already had a channel. I should have realized that, of course.
I just didn't know how I ended up with the channel. I was like, yes, I want to leave a comment, so I'll log in. That's literally what I did. And then they're like, here's your channel page. And I was like, okay, Google, YouTube, you guys are funny. So now I have a channel, but nothing's on it
Nice.
right now.
Nice. Well, yeah, no,
Yeah.
absolutely. It's yes, as you said, this organic SPTV movement that I call it
Hmm.
has kind of sprung up, and it's just an amazing way. Obviously, Leah Remini, Scientology in the Aftermath, and the Going Clear
Hmm.
documentary, and several of these other significant and important shows really did a lot to raise public awareness. But the thing that always strikes me is that, that's on a broad level, but the
Yeah.
amount of stories and the amount of pieces and the amount of elements of stories that just simply never made it to the show
Hmm.
of all the people that appeared is huge. And that's the beauty of the YouTube platform, is it's your voice and your words and on your terms. So
Yes, I know. It's so cool because yeah, and you do in a way that's so comfortable for you. Like I've been on at Laura FM. You know, we hung out after the Sea Org and going on her channel, and she's got her whole like jumpsuit on, and she's got this great vibe. It's so fun. You know, and like
Yes.
everybody has their way of telling a story, and that's like, and it's therapeutic for her. She's like working through her emotions. It's so cool. And like
Yes.
my good friend that's in the book, like he was just on her channel, so that was fun. So I jumped on to say hi, but I'm like, this is all happening. We're all
Oh,
out
wait,
here.
what was his name? I think I saw that.
So Sam Francis is
Sam,
Miriam's little
yes.
brother. And in the
Yes.
book, I don't know if he wants me to say his pseudonym. So
Oh, it's
I
okay.
won't say his pseudonym, but yeah, he's in the book though.
Nice.
He's a sweetheart, one of my friends. Yeah.
Yeah. And I, of course, knew, like, the world of Scientology is so incredibly small. I knew
Hmm.
Laura when she was at the Int Cadet Org. And then I knew Carrie Francis, Sam and
Oh
Miriam's
wow.
mom. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Oh
worked with
my
her
gosh.
for many years. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And now you know their children, and you're getting to know them, or and Miriam, you guys have had several conversations.
Yes, and I
Wow.
never knew Carrie. I think I take it back. I think at one point I kind of had a vague impression or knew something of Carrie having children, but like, for example, in the case of Liz Ferris and Bob Ferris, I had no
Hmm.
idea Bob had a daughter. Because it's just that isolation when you're in the sea organization. As you said, you become like this android robot devoid of
Yeah.
any personal emotion and connections. You don't talk about family or compare notes or say, "Oh, I really miss my mom." Even that is a forbidden statement for a Sea Org member.
Yeah, totally. It's the amount of control, like, and how they make it normal to not see your family and to like get divorces or to like leave people behind is really sad because
Yeah.
they sever that human connection.
Yeah. Does your family have family outside of Scientology that you're in touch with?
Yes, and we have they've been amazing, but they are going to be there for my family as like a point of contact. So they know that my parents and my sister aren't talking to me, but they don't talk about it because they want to still be there as somebody my parents can call, and
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
That
So
makes sense.
yeah.
I have the exact
Hmm.
same scenario with, my mom was one of 7 children. Only 2 of them were ever
Oh
involved,
wow.
and some of the others are just really angry with her, but others are, like, just gonna stay there just in case,
Yeah, be
and
somebody she can talk to, right?
yeah. Yep,
Yeah, well, my
absolutely.
mom's the same. She has 7 brothers and sisters.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, or 6, she's one of 7 as well. So, yeah, it's that time, right?
Yeah.
Of it, yeah. But, yeah, so they all know and, like, but they're there for her, and, yeah, I don't know. I'm thinking about things I can do, if I should send her my book, or I don't, they check the mail, though, so it's like, what's the point of giving them my book?
Yeah.
The church, so I don't know. But, yeah, to have somebody outside that they can talk to at least.
Yeah. Or
Yeah.
even sometimes what I've done is just send flowers. Like, I don't know. I've gone through waves of um
Mhm.
anger, grief,
Yeah,
forgiveness, and I've decided that it's okay. I don't have to rest at a final point in this process
exactly.
called life.
Yeah,
So I just do what I feel like whenever I feel like it. If I want to
yeah,
send a letter, I'll send a letter. So long as I can accept the burn if it gets returned to me. You know what I mean?
yeah. I wonder if I should do something like that, because I did send flowers for Mother's Day, like, 6 months following the disconnection. I sent holiday cards. I would try to call and leave messages, and then I just got, like, it was too hurtful on my end, like, so
Yeah.
then I took a break. But now I feel like I'm getting that, like, urge to, like, try to, because as, like, another thing that when I was talking to Dr. Steve Hassan, he was saying that, like, don't let them forget you. Like, keep putting your presence out there, write them letters, because it's easier for them to cut you out if you're not even there. Like, if you're
True.
not making an effort. And I was like, I never thought of it that way, that I was, like, kind of enabling them to disconnect from me in a
Yes.
way,
Wow.
because I was letting them do it and I wasn't putting up a fight. But I'm like,
Yes.
and I did actually, I don't know if you know this, but I did manage to talk to them, because through Aaron, somebody contacted Aaron, they knew where they were, and I was able to talk to
Yes.
my parents on the phone. So,
I heard that, which is
yeah.
amazing, and that's
So
the
that's
power of this
amazing.
community,
Mhm.
in many respects, and that's such a great point, by the way, on
Mhm.
continuing to fight, not, because obviously, well, not obvious, but for anyone listening, the goal in Scientology, from my perspective, and I'll
Mhm.
ask for your perspective, but if somebody outside Scientology is deemed a suppressive person, then they will put the Scientologist through rigorous handlings.
Mhm.
And the end goal of those is silence.
Mhm.
Like, that is the suppressive person rundown. For example, the end result
Mhm.
is supposed to be that there's just is peace. Like,
Mhm.
no more contention, but not through talking to the person, of course,
Yeah,
just
no, just get rid of the
through the
person.
counseling. It's supposed to
Yeah.
just happen. Um,
Mhm.
and why should we let that happen?
Right. I know. And that's the point. Yeah, like, I never had thought of it. Like, I was, and not to say I'm, like, in the wrong. I wasn't mentally ready. I was trying at first, and then I took a break. But now I feel like, okay, now I should try to make different efforts and see what I can do to just have them hear from me, and my brothers too. He's talking about flying out there and maybe just surprising them. So, because my brother is not a Scientologist, which is great. So he's
That's
here in
amazing.
Minneapolis. So I have that family relationship, which is great. But obviously, to be able to see our mom and dad, and, like, I would love for them to come and, like, stay, at near me, and see their kids, see my grandkids, see
Yeah.
their grandkids, my kids.
Yeah.
But in order for that to happen, I can't just give up. So I'm like, okay,
No.
I'm going to start doing just little things here and there to get them to start thinking about, why do they have to retire or whatever they're doing in this random building off of Pack Base?
Yeah,
I don't even know what
with
they're
no
doing.
family close to them, with no
Yeah.
connections, why does somebody have to live out their years completely alone? Where is
Yeah, and my
that?
sister too, like, I need her, she's in her mid-40s. I'm like, "You could still have a life," and, you know, she's not married that I know of.
Wow.
So, I'm like, I don't know. I need to get in there somehow, talk to
Yes.
her. Yeah.
Yes. Absolutely. And like you said, on your own terms,
Mhm.
when you're ready for it, I hope you continue that fight, and you certainly have inspired me to
Mhm.
pick back up my fight for my
Yeah.
family too.
Yeah. Oh,
It's
that's
not
awesome.
okay. It's not okay that they listen to Scientology lies. It's not okay. It's not. I don't agree with
Mhm.
that, and I'm not going to ever stop on this path of exposing Scientology abuses unless Scientology stops their abuses.
Yeah, that would be great. If they could just say, "Oh, we should stop doing all these things." That would be
Yep.
wonderful.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Then I'll retire.
Yeah.
Oh my
Oh, man.
goodness.
Yeah, I had
Awesome.
somebody, reach out, who's not a Scientologist, and they just DM me on, Instagram, and they're
Yep.
on at the Bad Cadet, and they're like, "I live in Tampa, and I drive by those Sea Org bases in Clearwater, and I just can't believe all this stuff happened. I'm reading your book, and I have 3 daughters," and she's just getting all, like, emotionally, invested, and it was so sweet, and she was like, I'm talking to my dad, he's a lawyer, I wanna know what we could do about it." I'm like, "That is amazing." Like, yes, like, please spread the word. Let's do everything we can. And that's like all of these stories, and like whether my book helps somebody or SPTV to learn more about Scientology and to get that out there. Like, it's so wild that this church, not church, the cult, has tax exempt status, is considered a religion, which really shields them from so much, like from
Yes.
investigations. We were talking about like even the LAPD, and like
Yes.
what are they, why do they not delve deeper into what's been going on around with the church, and how is it, even from me being 15, twice being brought back to pack by the LAPD, there should have been some sort of investigation. I know Miriam was also brought back, but I think they have this like shield around them because of that religion status. But the more we all talk out, hopefully we can lift that status. That would be a big step. And all that
It would
tax
be
money, like,
huge.
geez, we could put that
Yes.
back into America. We need some extra like community building out here, and the
Yes, we
schools
could
and
help
stuff like
educate
that.
all anyone who grew up in a cult, give them
Yeah.
the chance for proper education and starting a new life, handling
Hmm.
homelessness. Oh my gosh, I mean,
Oh my
on and on
gosh.
and on. I
Yes.
completely agree. And I agree
Millions of
too.
dollars.
We
Yeah.
will keep shining this very bright light on the
Hmm.
practices of Scientology because the fact of the matter is it's what happened, and unless we do that, they would continue to get away with these things, and that's not acceptable under any terms.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so very much for your time today, Catherine. Any last comments that you'd like to touch on before we wrap up our episode for today?
I just want to say thanks again for having me. Thank you for reading my book. It's so cool. I am always
Absolutely.
a little bit like nervous when people I really respect and know, and like, read something of mine, because it there's something about this book. It's my heart. It's like in there, and
Yes.
I'm like, please, please be kind. Everybody's been very kind. So everybody who supports me, the reviews on Amazon have been so sweet, and like I think I've done what I wanted, which was to show what it was like to grow up in the church's Sea Org, and I appreciate you talking with me and everybody who's been willing to hear my voice.
Absolutely. No, you have an amazing voice. It's a great book. We will link to it
Thank you.
in the video description. And thank you again so much for your time. And we'll talk again soon. How about that?
Yeah, I love it. I would love to.
Okay.
All right.
Awesome.
Bye.
Bye bye.